Lose that kind of heartbreaking game to Zhu Wenjun a few moments ago, and Anish, meanwhile, not in the flow. When he's at his best, wow, I was just about to say, when Anish is at his best, he can punish anyone, but will he punish Richard Rapport? Because Rapport's played a really weird knight move. Look at that white knight on the edge of the board. What is it doing there? I think this is called the Zvagintsev Sicilian. I'm not sure on the pronunciation
Never
there.
heard of.
Yeah, it's very rare line, named after a very strong Russian player. But either way, that white knight can be misplaced in some of these variations. In Giri, look at Giri. What's he doing with his face right now? He does not look amused at all. Yeah, he's not reacted to the surprise. He's just playing his move, played instantly as well. So right now, black needs to get castled. White is the first one to complete development. And has Giri frozen? No, he's just continuing to... He just not look amused at all. This opening idea from Rapport, it is very rare, we should mention. Putting a knight on the edge of the board kind of goes against all wisdom we're taught when we're young. And I think Giri, he's a traditionalist, he's a classicist. He wants to punish opponents when they do weird, wacky things against him.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's so rare. It's actually never been played before. I mean, just this position, total new ground. And that's kind of explains Anish's face. He did remind me of Laurel and Hardy, Stan Laurel. He would always go, I wonder what's happening there. And it is actually kind of natural when you're faced with a surprise. And it is a little bit orthodox because Rapport has kind of played this knight move to the edge of the board, but he hasn't backed it up by the usual plans. Instead, he's kind of relocated his pieces to unorthodox squares, and it becomes like, how am I going to make sense of what white is doing?
Yeah. How is he going to make sense of that knight? He decides, no, he's not going to keep it on the edge of the board any longer. He's going to try and re-centralise it. But this knight could have maybe found a better square, a more active square, if it hadn't gone to the side of the board in the first place. So definitely don't follow this one too much at home. But Richard Rapport, he's a creative genius. He needs to get those juices flowing. And this, I think, is the way that he tries to motivate himself. He loves to play weird stuff, get out of the opening. And by surprising his opponents with small little ideas here and there, I think that's how he often gets his victories. He normally makes them think, or normally kind of provokes them into a mistake. And look at what he's doing, putting all his pawns on light squares. It's as if he wants to trap his own light squared bishop, Rapport. And the evaluation bar not keen on this last move. It does look very counterintuitive, it must be said.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel that pawn move is like breaking the rules. And we're kind of taught, got to be respectful about your squares. Don't give your opponent any squares to kind of take control of. And look at Richard's position. It's kind of full of holes on the dark squares.
Yeah, it's like that type of cheese, what do you call it, with all the holes in it? Yeah, that one.
We have Jarlsberg in Norway.
Jarlsberg,
yeah.
And yeah, it's as if the cheese is the light squares where all white pawns are, and the holes are the dark squares in between all those white pawns. And yeah, I mean, we call this the Botvinnik structure with white structure in the centre, those pawns on light squares. But yeah, it can backfire if you don't get the right pawn breaks later, the right activity. If black, for example, can strike and open up the position, white will regret it.
Well, Anish Giri, he is coming from a win against Timur Ajabov. That would have been a win either way, because Timur has pulled out of the tournament. He is feeling sick. That's why you're not seeing a bar in his game against Jeffrey Chong. That is a walkover victory for Jeffrey, and it will be for all the players. So all players will gain 3 points against Timur, and of course we're sending feel better wishes for Timur, feeling sick unfortunately, and he is out of the tournament. One of the favorites, so that is a shame.
Yeah, I think I picked him as my favourite for the tournament.
You did, actually.
I'm regretting that one.
Now you get to pick a new one.
Oof. Jeffrey Chong.
Oh, fancy that.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, a lot of warm wishes to Timur.
Absolutely, yeah.
For getting better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, meanwhile, the first en passant that I've seen today, and maybe even in this tournament, black's pawn moved 2 squares, the black b pawn, but white captured it as if it just moved 1 square. And suddenly, change in pawn structure means that actually white's pawn structure that we were kind of really a bit critical of there, the cheesy pawn structure, is superior to black structure, because black is the one with the isolated pawn. If you look on the A file, that black A6 pawn has no mates. no other pawns around it. And long term, maybe an issue there for Anish Giri. Giri does have the bishop pair, however. So if the centre especially opens up, then black will be in charge. Richard's idea here is just keep it locked down. Those two white knights actually combine quite well. So I was critical earlier, but Richard, he did weird stuff, and now he's kind of trying to make amends for all those rules he broke a few years ago.
That's his trademark, right? You know, he does incredibly bizarre things at the opening, but then in the middle game, totally normal position. Maybe he has a little bit of a pull, and yeah, back to normal, back to business. And I have to say, I really do like Richard's position. For Anish, it's not easy to find a plan. I mean, the first move that kind of came to mind was actually to lengthen the diagonal of the dark square bishop, and you see that on the board. But beside that, that's it. I mean, there's no pawn break, so to speak of, unless I spoke too soon, unless you're kind of being really, really aggressive and going to start challenging White's pawn structure there on the centre.
Yeah, White's strong pawn centre, the Botvinnik structure, named after Mikhail Botvinnik, a Russian world champion. Yeah, it's very, very strong at the moment, that centre. It really blocks out this bishop especially. You're just staring at this kind of concrete statue right now on e4, so undermining it would make a lot of sense. And Jovanka, you mentioned no real pawn breaks apart from this, so maybe it's black's only real plan to try and undermine the stronghold in the centre. If you can open things up, for example, if white just makes a move, actually this move maybe prevents this pawn move, so let's say white just plays a slow move here, then suddenly black's bishops look fantastic along these two diagonals, the two longest diagonals in chess. And actually this is possible right now. Black's rook also becomes pretty active. Black's knight can jump into the centre of the board. Black's queen can slide back, line up with her bishop on this diagonal. So this would be ideal for Anish Giri if he can make it happen. And the question is, after this last move that's played in the game, White's rook stepping forward one square. Oh, I was going to say, is Anish going to seize the moment and push his pawn, try and open things up, go for glory? No, he's just playing a passive rook move. And the evaluation bar, not liking this. Maybe that was the one moment he had. And now, because this rook went to a passive square, not really clear what it's doing there, Rapport is the first one to push. And look at these white pawns, suddenly they're dominant. White may be trying to go forward on the attack. And Anish Giri saying, OK, this pawn push is maybe on your mind, so I'm going to try and slow it down. Black's pawns now just really solid. They're going to react to whatever white does. It's as if both sides are saying, OK, you come to me first. I don't want to make the first move. I don't think Rapport should be pushing pawns forward anymore. If he does push forward, if the position just becomes open, then the bishops are the pieces that profit.
And basically, White has done Black's dirty work for him, so yeah, don't want to be doing that. But then this begs the question: what is Richard's plan? If he's not going to go forward, I mean, I'm just looking at that tangle of pieces on the left. I mean, they don't have a purpose.
That's true. Especially this bishop right now. I was going to say it needs to be improved. It's not clear which square. I was going to say maybe use this square, just stare down at the black queen along this diagonal. But instead, he defends his knight. He moves his bishop. In this position, after black pushed a pawn, he defends his knight. Yeah, you're right, Jovanka. It's a bit of a tangle with these pieces. Maybe at some point he wants to relocate this knight, wants to centralize it. Maybe eventually, at some point, he'll swing his queen across, go for this weak pawn, this isolated pawn. It's unclear at the moment, but very much both sides just treading around and waiting for the other to make their move.
And I just want to mention one thing. Clock is now local in Iceland, 5:09. And exactly 50 years ago, right at this minute, Bobby Fischer walked in for the first game. He came 9 minutes late, and it's exactly 50 years ago, right this minute.
Oh.
I get goosebumps. Isn't that strange?
I can always feel it. They had their handshake. The World Championship match officially started this time 50 years ago.
Yeah.
First move was played.
Yeah. I saw some of that footage, you know, where Spassky was waiting for Fischer to turn up, and everyone was like, will he turn up? Will he come to the board?
And
it was like supernatural tension. And then he just kind of casually came in.
He blamed traffic jam, I think.
Yeah, I was
in
like...
Iceland.
A dog ate his homework.
Yeah. this minute, 50 years ago, the 1972 World Chess Championship match started with a disaster for Bobby Fischer in the first game, a huge blunder. And after this game, David is going to teach us all about that game. We're going to go through it in detail. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, huge blunder in that game. Actually, it was headed towards a draw. Everyone thought, a draw, that's a good way to start a World Championship. It's fair, both players will be happy, but one moment of madness cost Bobby that game.
Wow.
Yeah, arriving late, never a good start.
Exactly. All right, well, these two players, Richard Rapport, he played in the candidates. Anish Giri didn't make it to the candidates. He really hoped to make it, but he didn't. But Richard Rapport, he ended last place in the candidates. He didn't have a good tournament. But here he is against Anish Giri. What do you think about this game? Will it be a winner? Will it be a draw? What does it look like?
I'm hoping there's enough imbalance in the position that we will see a winner. It's not clear who that winner will be. But despite the fact the queens are off now, despite the fact we're heading towards an endgame, I can't see this one being drawn anytime soon. There are enough imbalances. As we mentioned, Black has this weak A-pawn. Black's bishop pair, however, do look pretty good right now. And there's a lot of life left in this position. The one thing I want to say about Rapport as well is that in the candidates, yes, he struggled, but the games he lost, Rapport, it's because he was trying to play normal chess. And that's not him. Every time he played normal chess, it seemed to backfire. Every time he played a bit weird, he got decent positions. And this game, he's definitely been trying to do weird stuff. So that's a good sign for him, I think, in this one. Anish Giri, I think he's reacted pretty well in general to the surprises. The evaluation bar's on Black's side. He's got a lot of time left on the clock, Giri, but yeah, it's just about who kind of feels this position now the queens are off, who feels it better, who can put their piece on better squares, who can create the first threats.
Yeah, and I think we, talking about Richard Rapport in the candidates, I think we have some footage of Richard Rapport playing the candidates. So on the chessboard, he didn't do too well, but when it came to his style, I would say he's a definite winner. He came every day with like a new fresh suit, different colors. He seemed, look at that. How cool is that?
It's very cool,
I know.
And red is the color of champions. And a new outfit as well.
Yeah.
Even better.
Very stylish. Is he known for that, Richard Rapport, to be one of the, into how he looks and clothing and, dressing stylish?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
I have never really noticed it that much until recently, I've got to say. Levon Aronian previously had that kind of that title, that mantle of being the best dressed, or at least the most flamboyantly dressed. But yeah, Rapport now. I love the pictures as well with the sunglasses just rocking up, like Reservoir Dogs, just
dress for success.
Yeah,
exactly. Bit of a rock star in a way.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things about Richard's style is that he does capture the hearts and imaginations of everyone watching, because it's so maverick and it's so unique to him that we love this type of chess player, and we love this creativity and this just quirkiness.
Yeah.
And he has a big fan base out there.
And he's changed federations lately as well, from Hungary, where he's from, to Romania, is it?
That's right. So I think that's going under process at the moment. It's not official, but he will be changing his federation at some point. I think he's had issues with the Hungarian Chess Federation in the past, some disputes there, some disagreements. And I know he and his wife, who's from Serbia, they've spent a lot of time in Romania in the past. They've played tournaments there, and I think he feels he'll get more support from a new federation for his career. So it makes sense, I guess. And I'm not sure where exactly he's living right now. I know he was living in Serbia, in Belgrade, for a long, long time. But either way, maybe that switch of federation would just take a burden off his mind. Maybe if he does get some more support. He's tended to work mostly alone for a long time, occasionally working with others. But if he does maybe build a team around him, do all the right things like Nepomniachtchi's doing, for example, then yeah, I could definitely see him coming back, getting back into the candidates one day, giving it a better shot. He's one of the most talented players out there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly a champion. And it's a special day of chess. And it's also, of course, a special day because we're celebrating Bobby Fischer versus Boris Spassky, match of the century, 50 years since that happened. And we are asking for our quiz of the day, who do you hold as the biggest champion in chess history? And Abhishek says that the biggest champion in chess history for them has to be Vishy Anand. His match against Topalov in 2008 in Sofia in a hostile environment was a classic. The volcano, the long road travel, and the no-draws chess made up for a nerve-wracking match. Also went on to win the last game. Yeah, that one was a very, very tense match. And Mike D says he doesn't have an answer to our quiz of the day, but just has a comment, just wants to share with us. His 7-year-old son decided to make a chessboard in Minecraft.
Oh!
We designed the pieces together. And I like it when the viewers and the audience they tweet us their selfies, their pictures of all the unusual chess things that they're doing. And of course, we do have our quiz of the day. You can answer that by tweeting us using the hashtag #ChessChamps. And remember, great prize up for grabs.
Absolutely. And talking about that great virtual chess set, remember that in every tournament, we do have an NFT giveaway. So you can actually collect chess pieces, different chess pieces in every tournament. And actually this tournament, it's a mystery chess piece, but that must mean it is a cool chess piece. So just head into chesschamps.io/giveaways and you can claim your free mystery chess piece that at some point you can actually use in a game, I think. I mean, it's very cool. NFTs, it's the future, you guys.
It is the future.
Yeah.
And you can use it in a game.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's free.
And it's free.
What's not to love?
Exactly. And we do have the pawn move that we highlighted quite a few moves ago, finally on the board. Anish wants to do one thing and one thing only. He wants to blast away, break down White's blockade on the light squares.
Yeah, he wants to open lines up for the black bishops. Makes a lot of sense. And one thing that isn't free, in this position at least, is the black pawn on a6. And this pawn looks like it's up for grabs, but if White takes it, then he has to do a lot of calculation because suddenly after a rook trade, black's rook can pounce. This pawn is no longer protected and black can counterattack, ignoring his own bishop. He can counterattack against White's bishop. And here we might see a whole massive exchanges. We would see rook takes bishop. But the key here is that at the very end, black is attacking this white knight. Black's rook also extremely active. And, instead we've seen maybe a strange decision from Rapport after black did indeed push this pawn and try to explode open the position. Rapport just said, yeah, you do what you want. I'm going to let you do it. And after a pawn exchange, suddenly black has a reversed bathtub structure. We call this the bathtub, but it's reversed. It's kind of upside down. And here, White just said, OK, I'm going to ignore you, move the king. White's king maybe coming towards the centre to protect this bishop. As we mentioned, that bishop was under fire in some positions, and Anish Giri just steps back now with his bishop to protect this pawn, just in case. I'm not sure it was actually threatened, but why not protect it? It is black's only weakness in the position, and now I think his plan is to just improve the black king, improve the black rooks, and here we go. The kings are both centralising. At some point, maybe black will switch the focus of the attack over to the other semi-open file, down towards White's pawn over here. Black might even use his other isolated pawn as what we call a minority attack, throwing it down the board later. I just love black's bishops. If you look at the two most important pieces in the position, it's these two. They both rake down on the diagonals. And that's why Rapport has retreated his knight. Next move, for example, if black pushes a pawn, Rapport wants to challenge black's strong dark squared bishop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, clever move from Richard there, because I didn't understand the point of it, actually, until you pointed out.
Maybe he's heading in this direction as well.
Yeah. But it does look like Anish is the one with all the potential, and I just love this idea of just using Harry the H pawn as a way to kind of crowbar open a line. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, it just looks like black's position is full of potential.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how big his advantage is. The computer gives +1 already for black, despite the fact it's level material. But either way, it's definitely black with all the fun, and it's because he has a more kind of flexible... OK, here we go. The H-pawn does push down the board. I was just saying hypothetically later, but he plays it now. But yeah, it's just the potential. Look at these central pawns. You can push them forward at any moment. Look at these bishops. They're just fantastic. And yeah, it's just... I think it's all about white trying to neutralize black at this point. Rapport has no dreams of doing anything active. Well, I say that, and then he tries to get active with his knight, maybe. But yeah, it's definitely white on the back foot. Black is the one with all the hope in this position.
I must admit, I thought Anish is maybe a little bit too committal with his by pushing the H-pawn. But OK, we will see the players are in full focus mode. And Richard has to find a role for his knights and at the same time probably trade off the dark square bishop. And, of course, keep an eye on black's activity. 3 things to do, not easy. And Anish switching focus. And now the heat is going to be on the right side of the board. And the one piece that Anish doesn't have really working that could be improved is the knight.
Yeah.
Knight's not doing anything. And in Dreamland, I would plonk it in the middle of the board and give a check to the white king. So I wonder whether the knight will find its way there.
Yeah, to the d4 square. Yeah, if he can get there, it takes a few moves. But if black, maybe just when it comes to planning, when you're thinking long term, you just imagine a dream square for your pieces. The knight's ideal square, it might be 1 square, and then you just track a route for that knight. And this position is a bit of a slow maneuvering position, so you do have that luxury of 2 or 3 moves here or there to just improve pieces. So white's knight is looking towards the black king. It wants to jump forward and maybe check the black king over the next few moves. Will Giri stop that? Is that even a scary threat? I'm not so sure. But then Giri will be thinking, OK, improve the black knight, improve the black rooks. I just love the fact that he's switching the focus of the play, Anish Giri, over to this side of the board now that the white rooks are actually distracted on the other flank. So that's very kind of typical strategy. If your opponent's focused too much on one area, if they're not actually threatening anything, switch the focus to the other half of the board. And Giri has stopped the white knight on this edge of the board from jumping in to the black half.
Yeah. And big issues, right? He has to use one of his rooks to defend. It's, well, it's a kind of needs-must move.
Yeah.
It's unpleasant, but it had to be done.
Very passive square, ugly square for the white rook. But yeah, he's at least saying to Giri, you have to break through. You have to find something special now. You have to find another gear of your attack. I mean, I'm looking at the black knight, but I'm also looking at that black rook in the corner. Maybe black can lift one of his rooks on the g-file and then swing the other rook across to kind of back it up. If you can double up your rooks on the same line, that's even more powerful.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's one plan, at least.
Yeah. So Anish in a very comfortable situation. Well, when we take a look at the clock situation, we see that Anish has just run under 6 minutes. Meanwhile, Richard does have a time advantage. He's on just under 11.
What is white doing, though, with all his knights on the edge of the board? He put a knight on the edge of the board on move 2. Now he's stuck with a knight on the other edge of the board and just breaking all the rules, Richard. Yeah, this is not the type of game to show your students, to show someone who's learning the rules of chess. Just breaking down all these barriers. But yeah, it's not working so far.
Could be a cautionary tale. You show this to your students. This is what happens when you break the rules.
If he loses, then it will be instructive. If he somehow miraculously wins as white, then yeah, definitely don't show this to the young students of the game.
I mean, when you look at the clocks, he's got a huge advantage. I mean, 26 moves, and Richard is more than 10 minutes on the clock. Should he play a little bit slower?
Possibly.
Yeah.
I think he's banking on the fact that later Giri will be low on time. Maybe Giri will make a mistake in time pressure. But you can't guarantee at this top level that anyone will make a mistake. Giri is phenomenally strong, and Giri's used to playing low on time. As we saw yesterday, Giri had this lost position against Aronian. He had 30 seconds, down 2 pawns, but he still held the draw. So Giri can be quick when he needs to be. Rapport, he's just saved up that time for later. But remember, Rapport, he lost to Zhu Wenjun in the last round. He still had 7.5 minutes when he lost that game. So maybe it's best to invest that time a bit earlier.
Yeah. Do you think that this is tiredness? Because obviously he's just played the candidates. On top of that, he also played the Bundesliga this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
So, and now we see him playing another high-intensity tournament. And
One of the most busy men in chess.
Yeah.
yeah. I think his schedule was incredibly packed. He'd accidentally said yes to all these tournaments.
He said yes to Norway chess, then he had to pull out last minute because it was just too much for him.
He just didn't think that he was going to qualify for the candidates, and then he finds himself, you know, oops, look at my schedule. It's a chock-a-block, as we say.
And that's actually a common it's something we see a lot, basically. When players are tired, they actually play quicker because they just don't have energy to sit there and calculate. They don't have the patience. And I've been there myself when I haven't slept well. I'll play a bit quicker just because I just want to get it over with. I just want to get back to bed and sleep. So maybe that's what Rapport's doing right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here we go. Black with his last move. Anish Giri, he's moved his rook down, but the other rook is ready to swing across and join its fellow on the g-file. This looks beautiful for Giri. OK, Rapport lashes out. He needed to do something before it was too late. And he tries to open the position. This pawn can be captured in two ways. It can be captured with the black f-pawn or en passant with this h-pawn. And, OK, at least he's trying to get stuff off the board. He's trying to just hoover off pieces. He's hoping that the trades will guide him to safety.
Yeah, but it's a really passive approach that he's employing. You know, he's just hoping to huddle up in the centre on the second row with his knights and then just survive. Sometimes you have to do these things, but it's never very pleasant.
Yeah, especially with white grovelling for a draw on the back foot the whole game. It's not ideal.
And having more time on the clock, you have extra time to suffer. Or, if you... Actually, I never advocate being a pessimist when you're playing chess. You need to be positive. And especially when you're defending. You just have to think about that one chance, that one little hope that you have, and take it on a move-by-move basis. So whilst you keep surviving, you know, your hopes just remain alive.
But you've interviewed both of you have interviewed Richard Rapport. He's famous for his pessimism, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah.
The way he talks about chess, you know, he hates the game, he hates his life, hates everything, but I can tell you he actually loves it. He enjoys the creativity.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit... He kind of likes to give that impression, because I'm sure when he's playing at the board, he's not thinking, oh my goodness me, what am I doing? My position is rubbish. I have to play this. I'm like playing the candidates 1 minute and now I'm playing this kind of position. I'm sure he's just not thinking that. I'm sure he's thinking about the chances he has.
Yeah, I remember I asked him, so what do you expect from yourself in online rapid chess? And he said, well, I think I'm better at classical chess, but I'm not very good at classical chess.
He's only like number 7 or something in the world.
Yeah. I grilled him a little bit over dinner in Norway chess. I was like, really? Really? And he laughed a little bit. I was like, ha.
Yeah, you've got to call him out on his statements, on his bluffs.
Because I was asking him, like, you know, because he also gives the impression that, you know, he's freestyling his openings. I was like, how much work are you putting into your openings? And he was like, not that much. No, I'm just literally just making... I'm like, really? And he goes, OK.
Well, I'm looking at 4 rooks on the same line.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Standoff time.
Standoff. And I think you've called the right moment to mention that, Kaya, because all the 4 rooks might just disappear on this next move. We could see white's rook, the front rook that is attacked right now by black's bishop, by black's rook. It has no safe squares. It could just go and exchange itself off, and all the rooks will just disappear. I'm trying to look for other options. Rapport's looking for other options, but I can't see a way to keep all the rooks on the board. And Giri's trying to force the exchange of the rooks because he's gambiting on the fact that the more pieces that disappear will favour his bishop pair. Black's 2 bishops, clearly superior to white's knights at the moment. So, yeah, we will see a transformation into a proper endgame now. And who will that favour? I think black.
It has to be black. I mean, black. But the question is, like you say, you know, will white manage to kind of curl up in a ball and just defend all those entry points?
Yeah. I guess white doesn't have too many attackable weaknesses. White has some weaknesses, but black's pieces aren't ready to attack them. Imagining this exact position, but all the rooks disappearing. It's still hard for black to make progress, to actually achieve something next. But what else is Rapport looking at? Is he thinking of jumping in with a white knight to give a check right now to the black king? Maybe that's an option, but that's very risky. That could well just backfire. But that's the type of player he is, Rapport. He's sensed something. He's saved his time. He's got so much time, but he's saved it all for now to try and calculate.
Yeah, I'm a bit puzzled, actually, as to why he's thinking, because exchanging off rooks looks the most natural move to me, but do you really want to change the dynamic of the position by... maybe it's Richard's style, actually. You know, he has a huge time advantage, as you mentioned. And I forgot that Anish has under 3 minutes and in full focus mode.
Yeah, does he want to change the nature of the game? That's the question. And let's just try and jump in and figure out what he's considering, because the rook is attacked simply. Why not just exchange rooks, trade one set of rooks, trade a second pair of rooks, and say, OK, white is solid here. It's passive, you're only playing for a draw, but at least maybe you can reroute this knight. I want to put it on this square, kick away the black bishop. Maybe black's just got an advantage and Richard doesn't want to sit here and suffer forever. So with that in mind, what else could he do? Is he going to jump in with his knight, give check? But then the problem is, after bishop takes, for example, if you take back with a pawn, you have to consider the fact that black is going to push forward. This is a double attack. It's a bit scary. Yes, you could pin this pawn. You could move your rook across, pin the pawn against the black king, but the pawn will just be backed up by its fellow here. And suddenly, this black pawn chain is extremely strong. Still threats against white's pawn here, for example. This looks terrible for white, to be honest. So what else is he considering? This rook is attacked. He has to trade it off. Maybe he could consider trading one set and then jumping in with the white knight, but similar problems will persist after a trade here, and maybe the black pawn stepping forward.
Yeah. Well, a set of rooks have left the board.
OK.
So we do have some progress. And once again, there is a pause. I mean, he must be considering that check.
This knight jump, yeah. Maybe his idea is quite concrete. If the knight jumps in, I'm trying to calculate on the fly here, but takes. If white recaptures, for example, if black steps forward, maybe he can get active with the white knight and try to jump in with a check. It looks a bit odd, the whole kind of justification for this. OK, he's traded a set of rooks. I was going to say the justification after a rook capture is that you can jump in with a check. And there are all sorts of knight jumps here. And I think white holds the balance. But if we jump back to the game, there have been some moves. All the rooks did depart from the board. And now white's bishop has gone on a journey. It wants to step into this square and start attacking black's pawns from behind. So a change of angle here. He's trying to go behind with his pieces, which you can do. Once the major pieces, the queens and rooks, have left the board, it's easier to infiltrate into your opponent's half, into your opponent's camp. And this is a weakness. But this pawn can be defended by black's bishop if it needs to retreat. So, for example, if black, say, steps back with a bishop now, what is white's bishop actually doing? That is the question. What are white's knights doing? That's the bigger question.
Well, 3 games have finished. Sevian, he got 3 points against fellow American Hans Niemann. Levon Oronian, 3 important points for him against the Norwegian Arjan Tari. And Wei Yi, a win for him against Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. And also Timur Rajabov and Jeffrey Zhong. That game has not been played because Timur Rajabov has pulled out due to sickness of the tournament. So Jeffrey will get 3 points in that game. All players will get walkover wins against Timur Rajabov. Also, the 5 players who already met him, but actually Timur had lost 4 of those games. It was only Shakhriyar Mamedyarov who played a draw against his fellow Azerbaijani. So Mamedyarov is the only one who actually kind of gains point from Timur Rajabov pulling out. 2 more points for Mamedyarov. But yeah, so far a lot of decided games this round. This one, do you think that will be decided as well? Probably, I guess, in Anish's favour?
Yes, that's the way it's looking at the moment, but Anish does have the clock to contend with. 1.5 minutes. It's maybe not the most, it's not ideal, at least when you're trying to convert a tiny advantage like he is here. But he's at least improving the black knight. Black's knight now has some squares to jump into, maybe. I love Anish's position, to be honest. I love bishop pairs, first of all, but I love also these types of pawn structures where it's all really nice and huddled together. You're really flexible as black. Big question, though. White's knight now attacking black's e6 pawn. So this knight finally has a purpose, finally off the edge of the board.
Yeah, the thing is, though, black's position is so solid, especially that pawn structure in the middle. It's so compact. And Anish just steps back with his bishop, coolly defends everything. And just for the time being, his pieces are not actively placed, but it is just temporary because now Anish is going to be looking at ways to regroup and advance his pawns.
Yeah, Anish needs to advance the pawns eventually, but it's just finding the right moment. And yeah, recently I've been studying a lot of grindy type of positions, grinding out these positions in the endgame, and that's this type of position. It's not going to be quick, it's not going to be easy, but just looking for these small advantages here and there, biding your time, not making the same mistake that Levon Aronian made yesterday against Anish Giri of rushing, pushing your pawns forward too quickly, prematurely. You need to find and pick the right moments, and that's what Anish is normally quite good at doing. He's very much a grinder at heart. He likes picking these small advantages like the bishop pair, like the better pawn structure that he's got right now. And later, long term, he'll try and convert that into something bigger or transform that advantage into maybe winning a pawn or maybe creating a passed pawn into something a bit more direct. But right now, the black king's just stepping back. I have a feeling the black king wants to kind of switch over to go and attack this white bishop, kick the white bishop out of the black half. Meanwhile, white is dancing with his knights. I'm not sure where that knight is going. But he loves putting knights on the edge of the board, Rapport.
The third time, right?
Third time.
A knight has found herself on the edge. That's slightly unusual, I have to say. OK, but still, white's position is quite solid. Black's position is also very compact. It's always like plan by plan, right? I kind of coined this phrase when I kind of looked at these endings. It's like the mini plan. You don't need to look at it so much by moves. You just look about what are the targets, what are the pieces to improve, and here for me it would be the black knight.
Yeah,
look at that on the edge as well.
Also on the edge of the board. Both knights are at least on outposts. They can't get kicked away by a pawn. Meanwhile, Giri down to 20 seconds. So he needs to speed up. You mentioned mini plans. He's struggling to formulate a plan right now, Giri. He's trying to find a way to improve the black position, but it's not easy. You have to look for tiny moves, tiny kind of 2-3 move plans. When in doubt, just move a king. Don't commit, just move a bishop, improve a piece. Evaluation bar really doesn't like that one, though. The only thing that might justify the evaluation bar going in white's favour is one of the knights jumping forward to start attacking some pawns, but I'm struggling to believe that white can be better in this position. Black's pieces are just covering every square. And Rapport, will he switch to a mode where he's no longer on the defensive? Will he suddenly get ambitious, Rapport, try and cause some problems for Giri? Because 20 seconds is not a lot. And there's still chances for the momentum to change. White does have some pawn pushers. White can push a pawn in the centre. White can jump around with the knights a bit. It's not 100% out of the danger zone for black at the moment.
Yeah, and he does.
Yeah, the knights do jump. We saw a couple of very quick moves there. Now black's king stepping forward. So black is still protecting everything with his bishops.
Mm-hmm. And I do wonder, in light of Anish's time situation, that he should maybe kind of prepare for some action. Although this is a very risky strategy because maybe the action is not great and it's a little bit too courageous in doing black's job for him. But, you know, Anish does only have 35 seconds left on the clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if Rapport wants to gamble and take a chance, which is actually very much his style, then it feels like now might be the moment while Giri is unsure about what's happening, while Giri's low on the clock. While he still has a bit of time. And look at Rapport. Suddenly he looks a lot more interested in his position than he did previously. Previously, he was just like thinking, oh, I've got to make some moves. It's not ideal. There, he looked focused. Suddenly he leaned back. He's like, oh, maybe there's nothing here after all.
What kind of move are we looking for then to see if Richard is going for the kill in this game?
Maybe a pawn push. Jovanka mentioned you could be pushing some pawns. Maybe white's central pawn, the white d pawn could step forward one square, but that would be extremely risky. OK, he gives a check with his knight, forcing the black king back.
Yeah. And if the black king steps to the wrong square, then there could be kind of like some switchback with the dark squared bishop.
Yeah, and actually we should mention this is the second time now we've seen this position, and Giri made a move. We've seen this before. He made a move without using his hands. We've seen it before in previous events.
Yeah.
It only ever seems to be Giri, actually. Maybe there was a slight lag, a slight delay there.
Pre-move?
It definitely wasn't a pre-move. You couldn't pre-move a knight retreat like that just in case your opponent had captured something and you needed to take back. It wasn't a safe pre-move, as we call it. So very strange.
That is the strangest.
Using the force, using
he's got
his mind.
great air quality. We have to say Airthings is monitoring the air where Anish Giri is sitting. It's great, his air quality. So maybe his mind can do just insane things. Moving without touching the mouse, for example.
The magician.
Yeah.
It would be nice to see it in action, right? Because in the Oslo esports, we could see them there with the camera over their hand and the mouse.
Yeah.
It would be nice to kind of see how maybe he's just like a supernatural, playing at a supernatural speed, you know?
Maybe one of his sons is just there. You know, he's just saying, okay, knight f6. And then his son is like, yes, daddy, I'll move the mouse. But
It's so strange.
strange stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And
Well, the position just repeating in a way. Black's king going back and forth, White's bishop retreating, White's knight's just doing a dance, but the status quo has been maintained.
it definitely has. I have to say, I do like Richard's last move, primarily because I thought about it and I suggested it. But I mean, the whole goal is just to relocate the bishop to a longer diagonal, and also maybe introduce the idea that it might be possible to challenge the pawn standing on c5 by playing b4.
Yeah, so if Rapport wants to win this game, then he will have to push this pawn forward to challenge this pawn, as you mentioned, Jovanka, or maybe at some point push in the centre to challenge this pawn, just to change the structure, because at the moment it's a bit blocked. And this backwards kind of bathtub structure that I mentioned, it just covers all the squares for black. So you need to remove one of these pawns somehow if you want to win. And talking of changing the pawn structure, Giri is the one trying to win. He's pushed this pawn forward now. We said he had the advantage the whole time, but 20 seconds is it's a big gamble to make with only 20 seconds on the clock. He's hoping that he can undermine White's pawn here. And the whole reason is now after a capture, this pawn is not up for grabs. It's poisoned. If you move your knight away and capture this pawn, then you lose protection of your other knight, and Black's king wins a piece. So these knights, we call them superfluous knights. They actually get in each other's way. They protect each other, but they're stuck. They're glued to their squares, holding onto each other. And maybe Giri's found a good moment. He's threatening pawn takes pawn right now, winning a pawn. If White just moves, then pawn takes pawn would win, because suddenly a knight check would force the White king back, and Black again wins a piece. White's knights now are big, big targets. Has the momentum changed again? Is Giri back in the driver's seat? It looks that way.
It certainly does. And I have to ask, the knight sitting there on the g5 square, it doesn't actually have a square.
Yeah, no retreat squares.
And that causes problems, actually. So I guess you are forced to go down one route. You know, you have to support that knight.
Yeah.
Nothing for it.
How? I'm struggling to even see a move, to be honest, for White here. I think Rapport's struggling as well. He's trying to disappear into his computer screen right now. Moving the bishop doesn't work for White. You can rule out that. It just looks like any bishop moves are not really contributing to the battle. The battle's switched all onto the king side, where the knights are. And, OK, he exchanges one set of pawns, and now he drops back. So maybe this is clever. He's now targeting Black's central pawn, the e5 pawn. And the White's knight... Oh, White's knights, sorry. They are, at the moment, surviving, clinging on. And Giri, I think he's panicking slightly, retreating his knight there. That's an OK move, but it does allow White's knight, the more advanced White knight, to at least jump into the Black camp if it needs to. Or we could see Harry the H-pawn step up one square to support its knight. The two knights, that is the only way White will lose the game now, by dropping one of those two knights.
Yeah. I must admit, if I were in Richard's shoes, I would just jump forward with the knight and get it out of trouble.
Too tempting.
It is a bit too stressful to have a knight saddled there on the verge of being trapped. And no, he goes for the alternative, which is just to push Harry forward, support the knight. A logical move, but at the same time carries a degree of risk.
Yeah, this is maybe the safer option, but as you mentioned, the risk, that would involve Black's king actually walking to the edge of the board, and White's H-pawn is a target, so watch out for that one happening a bit later. Whoa, OK, a couple of very quick moves there. I was just trying to hold back a sneeze. And meanwhile, yeah, what has happened? Because I was going to say what Black's king wanted to march forward anyway towards the White H-pawn. Richard Rapport just gave up that pawn for free. He just said, OK, check, have my pawn, and the White knight has jumped in. This is a check, hitting the White king, and the whole point of this by Rapport is he wants to win Black's central pawn. The e5 pawn is attacked 3 times. Can Giri save it? Big question here. Do you think he can save it, Jovanka? Black's a pawn up temporarily.
Don't see a way, I'm afraid. The White king has to step back, and then, nope. I mean, the light square bishop can't come to the aid of the pawn in the middle, and the black king is stuck there on the rim.
Yeah, black's king is actually temporarily on a very bad square. And Giri gave back his pawn. He advanced a pawn. Bishops have left the board. Ooh, I really don't like this transition for Rapport. Look at black's a pawn now. Black's a pawn could start running down the board. What's to stop it?
Nothing. Get going.
Yeah, get going. Start pushing.
Yeah, 15 seconds, Anish, and you have a pawn.
Yeah.
Push it.
Easy plan. OK, he doesn't go for it yet. He's maybe trying to keep that up his sleeve for later. Also, knights are notoriously bad at stopping corner pawns, these rook's pawns, like black's a pawn right now, because knights can only stop it from one side. Knights, because they are short-range pieces, they want two sides to stop one pawn. So, for example, a central pawn they can stop from anywhere, but corner pawns they're very bad against. So, yeah, Giri, the only one who can win this game for sure. But he is running out of pawns, so if Rapport can eliminate all the remaining pawns, it will be a draw.
Yeah, it certainly will. But, you know, what a task Richard has ahead of him. And, OK, he's relocating the knight. Well, I guess now is the time for Anish to step forward with the king. Just overprotect the f-pawn, and at the same time keep in the pocket the fact that the black pawn on a6 is going to push forward.
Yep, and if we count the pass pawns here, black has two pass pawns. The black a pawn, as we mentioned, it's going to start running very shortly, but also the black f pawn. That has no pawns in front of it to stop it. And in return, white does have one pass pawn of his own, the e4 pawn. And yeah, those two doubled on the c file, those are very weak. Those will drop at some point. Rapport, it's all about fighting for the draw here for him. The dream scenario is giving up one of his white knights for two of black's remaining pawns. Ideally, he wants to swap off at one set of knights. And if you note black's a pawn, it promotes on a dark square. So if white's king can run across and hide in that corner later on, then it doesn't matter what else happens. He can even give up the white knights.
Yeah.
We'll show that. Maybe it will happen later. But first, he's going after some of those black pawns.
And now Anish has 20 seconds to calculate whether he should get greedy and grab a pawn. It will just involve being a trade, but at the same time, it looks so good.
Yeah, it's very tempting right now. Black can... There we go. He goes to grab a pawn. He takes it with his bishop. Rapport looked a bit surprised there. And the question is, does white use his knight and go back to capture a pawn? Does he trade off a set of pieces first? Either way, it just feels like that black pawn, the a6 pawn, it's like an ace up his sleeve. He's going to save it for the right moment and start pushing it when white is least ready for it. Yeah, to be honest, I'm not so sure about this exchange. Why did black give up one of his own pawns for one of white's doubled pawns? He could have kept his pawn intact. But black is still the only one who can win. Now he's dancing around with his knights, Rapport.
And is there some threats on the board, like the knight coming in to give a check to the black king?
Yeah.
And
the problem is you're facing knights and you only have 10 seconds on the clock for Giri. Knights are so tricky to deal with. There's going to be all sorts of knight forks that he has to avoid. OK, that's a good idea. Step your pieces as far away from your own king as possible, meaning you're not within checking distance. So you won't get forked by a white knight if one of your pieces on one side and the king's on the other side. If your pieces are too close together, you'll get forked, you'll get double attacked. So that's a good strategy.
So with knights on the board, keep your pieces far away from your king.
When you're facing the knights. Yeah.
OK.
yeah, you have a look at those circuits that the knights will travel on and try to keep your pieces as far away as possible from that. And Anish still has the threat of pushing his a-pawn. Alice, she's going to get marching. And again, it's very unpleasant for Richard to defend. And he gives a check, king steps back. And how, I mean, presumably he just wants to... I mean, I'm trying to think of ways to try to give up a knight and at the same time win the black f4 pawn. But that's not possible, so he gives a check.
Yep, makes sense. When in doubt, give some checks. And at some point, you're right, Jovanka, white will try and get rid of black's pawns at any cost, even at the cost of some knights. So, yeah, the knight attacking the white, attacking the black bishop right now. The bishop retreats very far away, but white's knight's actually very well centralized right now. You could imagine the white king stepping forward.
Yeah.
He's going to save this game, Rapport, definitely. Black's pieces are just too passive. The black king, the black bishop, they're just on bad squares. And right now, this check is actually very annoying. White's central pawn looks very dangerous all of a sudden.
Yeah, things suddenly, just like that, they've turned.
Black's king's been forced from the white half all the way back to the back rank.
Yeah. And, OK, I like your idea of just stepping forward with the white king. Also, if he wants to get really ambitious, maybe he can even start thinking about pushing his own pawns. And he has extra time in the bank to think about things. What are you going to go for? King forward?
Yeah, when in doubt, just advance your king, get rid of Black's pawns, easy draw. But knowing Rapport, yeah, he wants to win this game. He's sensing a bit of weakness maybe in Anish Giri, but it's a bit risky what he's done. So he's won one of Black's pawns, but he's completely abandoned this guy. Alice the A-pawn. It's 3 squares away from promotion, and the white knights are very, very far away. So he's playing with fire here, Rapport. I said he wanted to win, but is he trying to find a way to lose suddenly? And also, both sides at 1 minute. Rapport, for the first time in this game, is lower on the clock. OK, he gives another check. And how is he getting his knights back? He needs to really hurry now. That black pawn is so close. And some of the squares the white knights want to use to retreat, they are covered.
I guess he has to use the F4 knight and plonk it on the B4 square or the C1 square. And that way he has the past Alice the A-pawn under control. And he gives a check.
Richard, the problem with him is we can never guess his moves. He's always going to do what we least expect, always what the opponent least expects. And right now, where is Giri going to try and hide the black king? OK, it goes back where it came from. Ooh. Oh, this is the second time we've seen this position. And third time, it's a draw.
It is a draw. Richard, Rapport and Anish Giri, two of the favorites.